This Aussie comedian is giving a shot at philosophical type videos. Are you talking about Jim Jeffries?
Young men being radicalized.
Ideas appealing to young men.
The cliche sentiment doled out by decaying media institutions. How dare these problematic young men not bend to our narrative? Clearly, they must be morally or
Oh, it's just gonna be more red pill shit.
even sexually deficient. You hear this everywhere. Online, TV, popular art. The basic premise being that any young man who dare think outside of the mainstream cultural narrative must be in some kind of radical pipeline, regardless of their position on the political spectrum. It can be the alt-right, the woke left. If you like Jordan Peterson, you're an incel, toxic Bernie bros, Joe Rogan bros, and Andrew Tate, forget about it. There has to be some sort of problem with all these young men. God forbid they're normal human beings whose attraction to these ideas can be understood when you look at the bigger picture. In this video essay, I'm going to talk about that bigger picture. I'm going to unpack some of the major ideologies currently popular among young men, talk about why they're popular, and predict...
Is your podcast with Farah going to be about red pill stuff? Fuck no. I'm trying to get out of this shit as much as possible.
...what may happen in the future. Before we start this essay, I want to just say a big thank you. I've done 10 of these video essays now, and for someone who was always a comedian to suddenly pivot into this world is, well, radical. However, I've been met with positive feedback, and I'm really enjoying these. I'm surely I've barely made it to base camp of Cringe Mountain, but I'm thankful that you've all been watching them and engaging with them. And not to mention, for my mostly male and Australian audience to see me wear vibrant colours that I colour coordinate with the light, speak intellectually with the head of David behind me, and not call me a wanker, that's a compliment in itself. There are multiple ideologies, popular figures, and worldviews that are gaining traction among young men. This is a subject I've already covered a lot, but it's so relevant and I want to delve further into it. I'm going to introduce these figures, cultures, and ideologies in this video, and over the coming weeks, I'm going to make singular videos.
Just curious a lot about co-signing you or Mel? Wait, about which thing? Wait, what is this in reference to?
Delving into each of them further, analyzing their main components, why they're popular, and what the future may hold for them. Number 1, Jordan Peterson. If you told someone even 10 years ago that a clinical psychologist would become a celebrity, selling out arenas to a mostly young male audience worldwide, talking about psychology and the Bible by...
Listen, the only apartment I'm co-signing on right now is my apartment, okay? You made opposing statements on that topic? Okay, here is what... I don't know why any of this is public. Here is what happened, okay? I think Farah said that I agreed to co-sign her apartment. I don't remember this at all. And I remember specifically joking, saying, because she at one point was looking at like, oh, here's a 4-year lease. And I think I made the joke, there's no way we're still going to be friends in 4 years. I would never co-sign that. But then she said, oh no, you did say you would co-sign my apartment. But then later on, when I asked her, I was like, I do not remember saying I would co-sign your apartment. Did this ever happen? She said, well, you were on your phone and I asked you about it and you said, uh-huh. And I think you were on Reddit. So maybe I did. If I did, I don't remember it or I just didn't hear it. But no, I haven't co-signed anything. But she might have thought I said it. I might have thought I said it. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I didn't. But I would never co-sign a stranger because I don't want to be on the hook for $35,000 of fucking rent. But her lease isn't even 4 years. I'm pretty sure that's all like a fucking meme. She's an actual retard if she thinks I'm in it. I don't think she was trying to get me to co-sign. She qualified for the apartment. She didn't need me to co-sign anything.
2018? You'd be called crazy. But that's exactly what happened. Dr. Peterson rose to fame on the back of his disagreement with students about Canada's C-16 bill regarding the mandated use of pronouns. He achieved online notoriety and fame for his impassioned warnings about the creep of postmodern neo-Marxism and his secular or psychological justification of traditional values. Now, I'm not going to sit here and dissect whether he's accurate or correct on everything, nor will I for any of the preceding figures or ideologies, but I'm going to talk about why he's popular. Dr. Peterson's major work is called Maps of Meaning. It's an exploration of great myths and narratives across cultures. Peterson says that the wisdom of a culture is encoded into their grand myths, their stories, and their meta-narratives. And this wisdom or these values are so vital and significant that they are true. he calls these stories true. He will say God is a representation of our highest value, therefore God is true. Now, that has caused him a lot of controversy, especially from new atheists. But this is where I believe he captures a lot of young men compared to, say, the new atheists. Take Jordan Peterson and someone like Richard Dawkins. Now, obviously I'm not here to tell you whether one is more correct than the other. But what I can tell you is how myself and many other men feel when we listen to Dawkins.
Why do you accept Farah doing such, saying unhinged shit about you? And when you confront her about it, she says it was just a troll, though there was never any indication that it was a troll, not until you confront her. Because she hasn't said anything serious that is like a serious thing. Usually it's people in the community interpreting it as like a really serious thing. Like the only serious conflict I've had with her had to do with the edit of the video. But aside from that, like her saying something like, oh, he co-signed or whatever, or some shit like that. It's not like, obviously I didn't co-sign anything. There's not like a huge disagreement there. Or her like making a meme on stream about like Hassan or whatever. It's not like, I'm not like genuinely upset or like anything like that. Like we're just like, yeah, it's just not a big deal. It might be a big deal to you, but what about poisoning your drink? That's like a Muslim thing, I think. Like apparently that's like a thing they do in their culture, so I just wasn't aware of that.
Compared to when we listen to Peterson. I listen to Dawkins or Sam Harris and I feel smart, I feel edified, I feel intellectually superior. I don't think that's their intention, but that's likely how they make many of their listeners feel. When I listen to Jordan Peterson, I feel inspired. And that is a far more powerful emotion and a huge advantage his ideas have. He is an expert in the power of story, he is an expert in psychology, and he offers men an inspiring story. As a young man, you don't get that anywhere else. Mainstream progressive culture talks about how young men are the problem, how they're collectively responsible for the hardships women have had to face. There's a sea of casual disrespect, and what's a man going to feel when he hears the narratives of mainstream culture? Shame, guilt, resentment, and, this is an important one, powerlessness. Peterson offers a story of inspiration and potential to young men, which is the opposite to what
this doesn't strike me as red pill. This is exactly red pill. This is everything. That is red pill.
They get from popular art and society at large. There are, of course, other factors, and like I said, in the coming weeks, I'll make a dedicated video analyzing his popularity. A core disadvantage of this kind of philosophy is that as the world continually changes at a rapid pace, traditional wisdom could grow less relevant and newer ideas could be necessary to move forward. There also isn't really a political narrative or long-term aim. I can't really foresee a Petersonian revolution or political coup. What will likely happen in the coming years is his philosophy and followers will be funneled into a new right or new center, along with other ideologies like the trad movement, centrism, a return to religion, all of which I'll talk about later in this video. Number 2, hustle culture. Now, this culture isn't really anything new or revolutionary, but in a similar vein to Peterson, figures like Gary Vee or David Goggins give their mostly male listeners a sense of purpose and inspiration in work ethic, discipline, and entrepreneurial success. Once you see people who have overcome their struggles, built...
This guy's actually defending hustle culture? Holy shit. What the fuck?
incredible companies, you have faith that you can do it too. It makes you feel like the hero of your story, and that's a powerful narrative and a huge advantage in gaining the hearts and minds of young men. It fosters meaning, great habits, and behaviors both individually and for society. A disadvantage to these ideas would be that this is a subculture rather than a philosophy or an ideology. It doesn't say much about the world at large, culture, or politics. In an
Isn't he just stillmanning each of these subcultures?
Period of geopolitical and cultural tension, I can't
maybe
see
I guess
the
maybe he's
subculture
just
growing into
maybe he's just going
anything
through all of them. I
large-scale or
guess. In fact,
substantial.
sure. Yeah, I guess.
Although I will say a David Goggins dictatorship would be mad. I predict their followers will also eventually be funneled into a broader new right in the coming years or decades, and new gurus and charismatic entrepreneurs will always pop up every now and again. I'm sure there are a bunch of VR and metaverse hustlers waiting to gain notoriety in the 2030s. Another disadvantage is, like with anything, it can be taken to a ridiculous degree where one's entire identity is based on being a hustler or being hard, and statistically speaking, not everyone can make it. So if one does not reach their financial goals, it can cause a lot of distress. It's not going away anytime soon, and different forms of hustle culture or male-focused self-help will always capture plenty of young men. Number 3, left-wing populism or the alt-left. With economic inequality the way it is, it's no surprise left-wing populism is ascendant in many Western nations. Bernie Sanders should probably have won the 2016 Democratic nomination. Here in Australia, the Greens, our left-wing party, is growing in popularity. The French protests could be called populist left, and there are many online commentators that could be described as left-wing populist or alt-left. You can break down this broad church into countless cultural and political factions.
Am I going to make an appearance here?
From a very broad perspective, 2 core components would be anti-capitalism and pro-social justice.
No, not here.
I think this ideology has a lot of advantages in the coming years. It gives people, including young men, a cause to fight for, a common enemy, and similar to the new atheists, it can often instill a sense of intellectual superiority or being awake in its adherents. It appeals to the grievances, pain, and suffering of people experiencing economic or status insecurity, and with AI likely to rock the jobs market even more, I wouldn't be surprised if an angrier version of left-wing populism gains the hearts and minds of young men in the coming years. It has some disadvantages, and these are as follows. In this social media age, anyone who posts about an ideology inadvertently becomes an avatar or symbol of that culture, essentially marketing the brand. Some of the more extreme cultural or woke elements are appealing to a subset of individuals that, to put it lightly, seem mentally ill, and for a lot of young straight men, it can turn them off anything considered even remotely left-wing. The cost of championing women and sexual minorities has created a space and culture that can be quite anti-male. It can make young men feel an unnecessary amount of shame or guilt simply for being men. It tells people what is bad about society and what to fight for or protest, but it doesn't tell you how to live your life on a day-to-day basis, nor does it seem to agree on a clear idea of how to design society after a revolution or mass movement occurs. And finally, because it's very egalitarian, it can struggle to organize effectively and maintain a hierarchy of order with aims above the self. It may have a disadvantage against some right-leaning ideologies, especially in capturing young men who seek out fairness and the ability to climb hierarchies as opposed to harm reduction. What could happen is that the cultural social justice elements separate from the economic anti-capitalist elements, and followers of left-wing populism could be funneled into a broader movement of anti-corporate populism that even includes some people from the right. In the next 20 years, if there is a mass economic shock,
can you
I could
argue against
definitely
this?
see an ideology
I guess he's
like
just
this
giving
taking hold and
what
really
his
winning the
opinions
hearts
on,
and
or
minds of a
trying
lot
to
of young
summarize
men,
what all these
giving
different
them a
political
cause to
movements
fight
online are
for.
right now.
However, if the cultural social justice elements continue to play a larger role, it'll still be a powerful and significant ideology, but I think it loses a lot of young men. Number 4, right-wing populism or the alt-right. Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind, talks about the 6 major moral matrices separating the left and the right. 2 significant values to the right were loyalty and authority. Young men want to belong to a tribe. They are evolutionarily designed to fight for that tribe and thus be attracted to militaristic movements that appeal to their sense of heroism and aggression. Nothing does this better than the alt-right. Right-wing populism appeals to people's sense of loyalty and a return to patriotism and nationalism, as well as wanting to belong to something greater than themselves. In a world that's telling men their intrinsically male impulses are wrong or immoral, a major revolution against that could come, and it likely won't be pretty. Its advantage is that it often appeals to the most aggressive men who would be most likely to start some kind of revolution and, at least in the short term, be effective. This could also be its disadvantage, though. The energy within a movement like this would be violent, aggressive, and This so-called radicalization is a result of a mainstream culture that offers young men no meaning, purpose, power, or tribe. Corporations or the establishment will continue to side with progressive or woke culture. The reason being that making justice about identity rather than economics doesn't hurt corporate profit, and in living a life dedicated to climbing a corporate ladder, one is devoid of deeper meaning and thus is far more likely to attach themselves to what John McWhorter calls the woke religion. Over the medium term, the populist economic left will merge with the less extreme elements of the populist right, and this kind of populism versus establishment progressivism will be the major cultural and political factions, with moderates and centrists deciding elections based on economic conditions and which extremes of culture are more threatening. Men and young men inheriting a world where they are less needed will lean towards populist ideologies or centrism. Wokeism will peak sometime this decade, then plateau and go down. The reason I suggest this is that a lot of young men, even middle-aged and older women, are already stepping back from. It struggles to form hierarchies and aims for causes greater than the self, also appealing to some of the least disciplined, least aggressive people. Low fertility rates compared to other ideologies, the general pendulum swing of culture.
Okay. Do I think Black Lives Matter? Sometimes. Depends on which ones we're talking about.